Hey everybody, this is Peyton from 4x4 USA, and thank you for listening to another episode of 4x4 Chronicles. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the top things to get started for wheeling. I think the major question is, what vehicle are you looking for, and what supplies do you need to go wheeling? So let's dive in. As a new or going to be new 4x4 enthusiast, where should I start? I think that is the main question. Where should I start? Well, first you got to buy a vehicle. And I think a lot of new and upcoming 4x4s, they look for the most expensive thing out there. They see all these people on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and it's just unrealistic. So I think the vehicle that I would suggest is something cheap and affordable and a little bit older. And the older part will come into play later. You don't need the most expensive vehicle out there. It just doesn't make sense for a new 4x4 person to buy the most expensive vehicle. When I started out, I bought a 1981 Toyota SR5. It ran on 3 cylinders, and I got it for $300. And I went everywhere in that thing. It was amazing. Like, I probably took it on places in places that I probably shouldn't have, but I wasn't afraid to drive it like it was supposed to. In fact, it had a bumper sticker on it that said "Drive it like you stole it." It only went 65 miles an hour, but I could pretty much climb anything that I could put my eyes on. The next thing that I look for is reliable-ish. It, like in my story, it doesn't have to be running perfect. Maybe you just have to add in a couple spark plugs, or maybe a cap or distributor, or who knows, maybe it has an exhaust leak. It just needs to be reliable-ish, because you got to remember, you're going to take this all apart and you're going to build it how you want to. Going back to the older thing, it needs to be able to be worked on. In modern vehicles, you cannot work on anything unless you have a supercomputer. So if you're willing to spend thousands of dollars on a computer system to tune or check engine lights, or basically anything to run the car, go towards the older model. You'll be able to work on it. You'll be able to put the parts you want into it. You'll be able to get into the motor. You'll be able to get into the transfer case. You'll be able to get into the transmission. You'll be able to rebuild the axles to what you want. If you can think of it, in an older vehicle, you can basically do it. The next thing is, it needs to be a 4x4. There's no room for building a 4x4 in an all-wheel drive vehicle. You won't be able to add transfer cases. You won't be able to put a gear reduction in it. You won't be able to swap the gears out in the pumpkins. You will literally have to build it cookie cutter style for what parts are manufactured for it. There's really no design, or there's really no imagination when it comes to an all-wheel drive vehicle. I think they're great. I just don't think that they are great for building a rock crawling machine or a 4x4 machine. Plus, they're really hard to work on. I mean, it's more new age, an all-wheel drive vehicle. So you can't really work on them unless you have that super expensive computer like we talked about. The last thing is get a daily driver. So if you buy a less expensive vehicle that you can work on, get a beat up daily driver that you can drive around town, or have a nice car, or, but have a second vehicle. You can't work on your daily driver and drive it. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. I've done it multiple times, and it's a wreck, because say this weekend project that you're planning on turns into a 5-day project and you have to go to work on Monday. It's just not going to work out in your favor. The next question is, or the next statement is, bigger is not better. At the very beginning, new 4x4 drivers are looking for the bigger and better option, but it might not be the best option for you. You don't have to show up in a 2022 Tacoma to impress people. It's not important. Impressing people is not the important key. What is important is that you're having fun and you're somewhat safe. Also, if you buy a $60,000 or $80,000 truck, you're not gonna drive it like a $300 truck that you've built yourself. You're gonna baby it. Because one, more than likely, you're gonna have to get a loan. Two, you're not gonna wanna crease fenders or body panels or run it against rocks or drive it through the creek, fill it full of water. You're not gonna wanna do it. In fact, you'll get to the situation and you might be saying, oh, well, no, I will do that. Till you get to the situation and you gotta cross a river that floods your whole truck. Now your electrical system is toast. Again, on social media, they portray it as that's the only way to do it. But those people are either sponsored or it's a tax write-off. Get something that you can afford. Number 3, what to have in your toolbox. Well, the first thing is a toolbox. You will need a toolbox to go in the back of your rig. And there should be, I think, two sets of tools. You should own 2 sets of tools. One that goes in your rig and one that stays at your house. I've seen in multiple cases where you're out wheeling and you're bouncing around and all of a sudden you lose your toolbox. Well, say you lose your toolbox and that's your only set, and then you break something, well, you're kind of screwed when you get home, because you're gonna have to go buy more tools to fix your vehicle because you won't have any. So have those 2 separate sets. A tow strap. Now, I'm not talking like a ratchet strap. You cannot have a ratchet strap as a tow strap. Go get a high quality ratchet strap. Excuse me, go get a quality tow strap for your tow strap and make sure it's rated for your vehicle. I've seen where guys are stranded in the middle of nowhere and they don't have a source of towing, and it happens more often than not. So make sure you get some good recovery gear for your rig. A quality jack. This is a big one. A quality jack that you can use time after time in the wilderness. Don't use the scissor jack that is provided with the vehicle. It is your life on the line when you're under a vehicle. Make sure you get a quality jack. I use a bottle jack. I can't remember where I got it from, but honestly, it has saved my butt time after time. And I feel comfortable working underneath it, that it's not gonna give out and land on top of me. Along with a jack, you need a lug wrench. get a star, one of those cross lug wrenches, because you never know what's going to happen. Say you have this size lug and then you bust your lugs off and you have to replace them in the field, and now your new lugs have different lug nuts on it, different size, and you only have that standard lug wrench. Get one of those cross lug nut wrenches. It'll save your life. It honestly will save your life in the end. Also, don't put the stupid locking lug nut on. That is literally going to just frustrate you in the field. It'll be caked in with mud, you'll lose the key, and then you'll end up trying to use pliers, you'll bust your knuckles, it'll take more time. Just keep your normal lug nuts on. Yeah, that's what I gotta say about that. I have been in that situation where I'm trying to get the key in there and my lug wrench, and I'm trying to twist it, and I twist the center out. It looks good, but don't do it for your 4x4. It's just a pain and it's a hassle. Jumper box. Okay. Say you're out in the wilderness, you're on your 2-track and you're by yourself. You need a way to jump your own vehicle. Like, it happens all the time, especially when you start adding things to your electrical system. It's going to burn out your battery quicker. Make sure you have an option to jump yourself or a buddy in that situation. Yeah. And then, going back to tires, make sure you have a tire patch kit and maybe a portable pocket pump. It's one of those ones that you either plug into a cigarette lighter or you attach it directly to your battery via alligator clips. These will potentially save your life and get you off the trail to a main road where you can actually work on something. I've seen it where a stick goes through a tire and you don't got a tire patch kit, and in the situation, the tire's going flat, and hopefully you have a spare. Some people don't have spares. And it would have been just nice to shove a tire patch kit right in the sidewall to at least get you to a flat piece of ground, so you're not trying to change your tire maybe on a hillside or in a snowdrift or in a mud puddle. So get that into your toolbox. Now, I keep a lot of this stuff just in a tote, and it just stays in the back of my truck. Unless I'm like driving around town, the top's off. But if I'm going out and about, I just put everything in a tote so I know it's there. I know I'm ready to go. If I unload it, I know I just have to grab my tote and slide it in the back, and then I'm ready to rock. You can strap it down, and it usually doesn't go anywhere. And it has everything I need to make sure I can at least get back to the main road. I cannot harp on that enough to get back to the main road that you can trailer it back home. Yeah. Tools at home. You're starting out to build cars, right? And it's very intimidating thinking that you need the best quality tools at home. I'll break the news to you. You don't. Unless you're a professional mechanic or planning to be a professional mechanic, you don't need professional grade tools. In fact, you're just paying for the name. Craftsman for an everyday backyard mechanic will do great. Some tools that you dire need to have. Torque wrench. Get yourself a torque wrench. I don't trust electronic torque wrenches. A lot of people do. I'm just old school. I use a mechanical torque wrench where you just dial it up, and that's what sets the pressure. But make sure you get a torque wrench. If you over torque something, your parts are going to wear out faster, and then you're going to be constantly replacing parts. It's going to get expensive. The next thing is, if you don't torque it enough, things can come loose, parts wear out or come apart, and you could put yourself in danger. So get a torque wrench. The next thing is a axle nut socket for the vehicle you choose. This is important because you're gonna have to replace bearings. When you put bigger tires on something, you're going to have to replace bearings. And you can't get to those unless you have an axle nut socket specifically for your vehicle. And every vehicle seems to have a different axle nut. It's true. My Ford, my Scout, my Toyota, they all had different axle nuts, and I have different axle nut sockets specifically for them. A pickle bar. Tie rod ends, you will bend tie rod ends. It's the name of the game. They're right up front. You can't protect them too much. Expect to bend tie rod ends. A pickle bar will save your life when you're trying to get your tie rod ends off. In fact, that might even be something that I put in my truck kit also, is a pickle bar and a couple tie rods. It may or may not help you in the long run. And then the standard wrenches, socket sets, standard and deep well, and then pliers, screwdrivers, and make sure that the wrenches and sockets are not the sizes you need, but the either standard or metric. If you're working on something newer, like maybe 90s and up, you're gonna need some metric. If you're working on like 80s and down, like on American vehicles, a standard set would work. Do not go cheap and be like, oh, I'm just going to use this metric on this standard bolt and it'll be okay. You're gonna fight the bolts. You're gonna get frustrated and you're not gonna want to do it. So, and then a timing light. I think a timing light, everybody should own a timing light, especially as you progress in your mechanical abilities. You're going to want to time your trucks, especially if you're like going into the mountains, or maybe putting a different carb on it, or changing out your cap and rotor, or your, I don't know, timing belt blows and you have to retime it. A timing light is a very big necessity in that in the toolbox. The next question is, where can I go wheeling, or where can I find the info to go wheeling? So we're talking about cars, and then where can I actually go to test out and not get in trouble? You can't be driving across anybody's field unless you have permission, obviously, but you can't just be driving across fields going wheeling. You have to actually go to a specific area. Those certain areas are usually like public lands, Bureau of Land Management, Forest Service, state, rec parks, and they all have different rules and regulations. So, for example, if you're driving on Bureau of Land Management, you can drive on designated 2 tracks that have already been existing, but you can't be driving off in the field. Forest Service, you can be driving on the trails that are designated for 4x4 use only. State land's the same. Sometimes they have recreation areas, sometimes they have trails, sometimes they have 2 tracks, and then 4x4 recreation areas. These are designated areas set by a certain person or organization that you can take your vehicle wheeling on. It's usually a pay-to-play kind of place. Now, if you have any questions about this, make sure you contact that office. Just don't go unless you know, because the fines can be pretty gruesome to your account, and it's just not fun. It really takes the fun out of it when LEO shows up and you're getting a ticket because you weren't following the rules, and you say, well, I didn't know the rules, and then that just doesn't cut it. So just contact your local agency or your local rec area, and they can tell you all the information that you need to know. Like, do you need a permit? I know in the Forest Service, you need permits to drive on OHV trails. So make sure you call before you go so you don't get yourself into trouble. The next thing is Onyx. Onyx, this is not paid promotion for Onyx. I just like Onyx because it shows between public land and private land. Sometimes two tracks wind through private land, and you can get yourself into trouble if you don't look at the map. Yeah, and it will literally look like any other land. So I use Onyx Hunt and Onyx Off-Road, and that's kind of how I plan my courses before I go, so I don't get myself into trouble. And then the last thing is local wheeling clubs. You can find these guys and gals in or on Facebook or any social media, really. You can get in contact with these wheeling clubs. And not only is that awesome because they'll give you information where you can go, but sometimes they set up like monthly wheeling. So then you can go as a group and you can get tied in with the group of people that are thinking like-minded, like you. And honestly, I think it's fun because then you get to go out in the wilderness, go rock climbing, go overlanding, and you get to listen to everybody's story, and you get to hang out, and then maybe you can go work at each other's garages and you help each other, and it's a really great community to be out there. The next question is, what safety equipment should I have? What safety equipment should I have? First thing first, plan your trips. Plan it for yourself, plan it for a family member, so they know where you're going to be. You don't want to be stranded somewhere without any service or any contact, and they don't know where you're at. It's really embarrassing when local authorities have to come and find you. Plan the event, sit down with them, pull out a map, draw on the map where you're going to be and your time frame. And then say, if I don't get in contact with you for, say, 2 days after I'm supposed to be back, send somebody to come find me. Second thing, minimum at least a seat belt. Some vehicles only have lap belts. My Scout only has lap belts. A 3-point harness, like a standard seat belt. Now, if you're doing some crazy stuff, maybe a 5-point harness. But you're just starting out. Seat belts will work. A lot of overland crews that just drive like 2 tracks through the wilderness, all they use is normal seat belts and wear it. I have a bad tendency not to wear my seatbelt when I'm overlanding because I don't feel like it's a hazard, but anything can happen, especially if you're building your own vehicle. Things can come apart. Just be safe. A roll cage. Now we're kind of getting more into we're getting out of the novice stage, more into pretty regularly going out wheeling. I think a roll cage is very important. A seatbelt can, yes, save your life, but say you're side hilling and your vehicle lands on its top 3 or 4 times. A seatbelt is not going to save your life when your roof is crushing in on you. In fact, some wheeling clubs require you to have a roll cage, and rightfully so. It is a hazard, depending on the trail, if you're gonna roll over or not. The next thing, a radio. Some type of radio, a CB, a 10 meter, a 2 meter, a GPS system that has SOS on it, something that is other than your cell phone. We rely too heavily on cell phones for contact, but when you're in the middle of the wilderness, you can't really get the best cell service. So have a second option to contact somebody. It's very important. Yeah. The next thing is a med bag. I always carry a med bag in my rig. You never know what's gonna happen. And in my med bag, I have pressure bandages, I have a tourniquet, I have regular bandages, and I have extra water and food. And I don't touch those things unless I absolutely need them. You never know what is going to happen in the middle of nowhere. Be prepared for the worst, so then it's not so bad if things happen. Basic what's the word? Basic first responder stuff would work great. So stop the bleeding, put it above your head, call EMS, and get patients moving. I think that is the number one priority, is if somebody gets hurt. Get the ball rolling to get out of there. If you want some information on that, maybe you can print a page out. It's called the MER. It's used by the military. And it's a step-by-step process to make sure that you're not missing anything when you're trying to export a patient out of a remote area. So that might be a good option too, to put inside your med bag, because maybe you're the one that's down and your friend is the one who has to save your life. The next thing is a mapping system. Get yourself a mapping system. I use Onyx. Like I said, Onyx Hunt and Onyx Off-Road. They show both public land and private land. 2 tracks where you can go, where you can camp. The only downside is you have to prepare on Onyx, especially when you're going out into the wilderness. You have to download the Onyx offline maps of the areas that you're driving. Do not just go willy-nilly and think, oh, I will have service in this area. If you're in a coulee, you're not gonna have service, and your map is going to disappear when you're traveling, and then you could potentially get off the path that you're supposed to be following. So make sure you prepare in advance if you're using a device-driven map. I also like to carry paper maps of the area that I'm going. I like setting up campsites on these paper maps, just drawing little triangles to know where I'm stopping for the evening, or if I'm close to the area or if I'm far away from the area. I just like having the paper map in my back pocket. And then last but not least, a fire extinguisher. I'm really bad about carrying a fire extinguisher. I have a mount for one. I just usually forget it at home. But I think it's very important to carry a fire extinguisher with you and ready to go. You don't want your fire extinguisher under all the junk in the back of your truck, and then your truck light on fire and you have to dig through everything to put it out, right? We want something accessible down by the seat, maybe on the floor by your transfer case, maybe on your center console, maybe on your roof, wherever you think it's easiest to access in a stressful situation. You're not gonna have to, and maybe even practice with it too. Like, oh no, like our truck's on fire. Like, reach for it so you're ready to go. And necessarily it's not to save your truck, but maybe save yourself or your friend in the end. Helicopters, they use little fire extinguishers. They're about those like camper size ones, and it's not to save the helicopter, it's to save the crew. So maybe you can like put out a small fire, but maybe you are just trying to put out your buddy or yourself. And in a very stressful situation, it just needs to be in an accessible area. So we went through 6 different things that I think is important or even required to start wheeling safely and effectively. So take this with a grain of salt. I mean, there's 1,000 ways to do this, but ultimately you need to be safe while you're out there. And then also we need to protect the land that we're driving on. A lot of people forget this. They think, oh, this is public land, we can do whatever we want. But ultimately it's just gonna ruin the accessibility of land for everybody else. So pack out your trash. Don't be dumping fuel on the ground. Burn, like, if you're gonna have a campfire out in the wilderness, like, put it in a ring. Like, keep the land as nice as possible so the access doesn't get cut off. There isn't a lot of land to go wheeling unless you want to pay a lot of money. So we have to respect what we have so we can keep doing it. Well, thank you again for listening to 4x4 Chronicles. I'm Peyton from 4x4 USA. And if you'd like to watch this podcast, you can go to 4x4 USA on youtube.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And I hope to catch your ear on the next one. And like always, God bless.